Welcome to Real Talk in ELT, a podcast that talks about the reality of teaching English.
Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of Real Talk in ELT. It is me, Kelly, and I am here by myself today, but I do have something... Well, you know me. I'm always stirring the pot. So I was listening to this probably relatively controversial podcast. Again, I listen to everything. I try to be non-judgmental, and I think good ideas come from all over the place. Inspiration is everywhere. That is my motto. So I was listening to this podcast, and what got me hooked into it was that it had a controversial title, and it was about something completely unrelated to English language teaching. And I happened to be walking while I was listening to it, and it was just something that popped up on my my queue, and because I had started, I was like, ooh, I wonder what they're going to say. Do you know when you see something, you're like, this is going to be a train wreck? Okay, so that was initially what I thought. I was like, oh God, this is going to be so controversial, and I don't even know how they're going to have this conversation, but okay. So I decided to click on it. I will let you know that it was talking about kind of like a social issue. It was talking about how body positivity is not a good thing. Again, I'm not supporting this idea. I saw the title. I was like, ooh, that's gonna be a very difficult conversation to have. So I thought to myself, why not? Why not listen to this and see how they kind of navigate that? I was actually kind of interested in how linguistically they were going to navigate that without saying something that was so, maybe outrageous or offensive, or I don't know. So I was just interested because I just thought it was going to be fun to listen to. Okay. But what ended up happening was so it was an interview with a guy, and he was massively obese. I mean, to the point where he was huge, over 400 pounds. In kilograms, I don't know. I would have to 2.2, so maybe like close to probably like 200 kilos or more. If you, I don't know if I did that conversion right, but sure. Big guy, obese, massively overweight, and anyway, so they were just kind of talking. The guy was interviewing him. He kind of became this sensation on Twitter, I guess, where Arnold Schwarzenegger was supporting him, like sent him a message and gave him some workout tips. And so then he just like blew up. Thousands of people are supporting this guy. And he just, he's just going to the gym and trying to lose weight and be healthier. So, okay. Again, I clicked on it because I thought the title of it was juicy, so I thought it was going to be controversial, and I always like listening to those types of things. Anyways, but what happened during the conversation, ironically enough, made me relate it to teachers. Not because teachers are overweight, no, but because the message that they were sending was one that, and I wrote it down, kind of my interpretation of it is that society is normalizing consumerisms, right? So, and he was talking obviously about food. So, he would get his salary, and as his salary kind of went up and up, and he had more ability and more purchasing power to get things, he still tended to kind of overindulge in foods and things like that. So he was talking about that aspect of it, and that it causes us, because we have this idea of consumption, that it causes us to not really have any hobbies which are not based on repetitive consumption. So, and I kind of identify with that, right? So like, if you think about it, the hobbies that we have nowadays, there's usually some consumption towards that. Like there's some sort of consumerism embedded in that, and repetitive consumerism too. So if one of your hobbies is traveling, you're going to have to pay to do that. And if one of your hobbies is, going out to bars with friends, or going to concerts, or going to museums, or seeing some sort of cultural event or so. So all of these things, while I don't think in the core essence of them, like if you're going to a museum or a cultural event, I don't think that's like, oh, wow, you're such a consumer. No, because I think you genuinely like the content of that show or place that you're going to. But inherently in that is that there is consumption. Like you have to pay, and then usually when you go there, then to go and have a nice day. Like for example, my husband and I, for us to go out and have a nice day, we usually go somewhere, which is fine. We can travel around. So we go somewhere. I mean, we're buying gas, but okay, we go. And then, but for it to be a nice day, usually we go out to lunch or we go out to dinner, or there's some sort of consumption. And he was focused on the food consumption. And usually, and because that's a huge part of us being social, is that people eat. I mean, we could go into the anthropological, like if we wanted to go back in anthropology and see why we, okay. But again, nowadays it turns into paying, consuming, and doing all that type of things. So Crazy Kelly, what I thought of was, that's interesting. And then I looked at my own hobbies and the things that I like to do. And I have leisure, I'm going to put quote unquote, leisure activities that are based in consumption. And not leisure activities that are based in growth, or leisure activities that are based in, and this is me talking about me, so it might not apply to everybody. But for me, I was like, no, that makes sense for me, because my leisure activities are primarily based in some sort of consumption, whether it's consuming content like podcasts and social media and books and things like that, or whether it's, going out to eat with friends or doing that type of stuff. So my leisure activities are based in consumption. So I understood why this person had this perspective. What I related it to with teaching is that we see that nowadays, not non-leisure activities for teachers. Non-leisure activities, when we're talking about like professional stuff, is all based in consumption. All of it. And it's, how many books do you have in your library? How many courses or diplomas or degrees or certifications do you have in your professional profile? How many events have you attended, whether it be webinars, whether it be anything else? How many events are you attending? How many students do you have that are buying and consuming your book? Okay, so everything is about numbers and quantity, and it's just so focused on, I need to have more. And this is consumerism. I mean, it's not necessarily, well, a lot of it we have to pay for, but it's just consumerism, right? Within the teaching profession. And what I thought to myself, because this person's message was, because he had this, what happened was he got on the scale and the scale had an error. The scale couldn't even weigh how much he was, because he was over 400 pounds. And that turned into him saying, I need to find something that I'm not consuming. I need to find something that's valuable for me that is not based in consumption. And what he said is that he turned to activities that he enjoyed doing. He's trying to do more physical activities, obviously, because he's trying to lose weight, and activities that involved friends, family, community, and his faith. So he wanted to participate in activities, do things with people that wasn't like, we need to go out and consume something, just spending time being more immersed in his faith. Whether that's something you choose to do or not, that's fine. But so that was his message. And I thought to myself, well, teachers could learn a lot from him, because instead of doing, and I am guilty of this, I'm not going to say that I'm not, instead of doing more and more and more, and accumulating certificates and accumulating this and accumulating that. And I know that we actually have to do this on a professional level, because eventually you're going to reach a point where you have to say, well, I need to get more information, or I need to expand, or I need to develop professional skills. I need to do something, right? So it's not that we can't do this, it's that we only do this. And I think that is what hit me. It was that if I'm doing something, for example, if I'm doing a professional event or training something, and I sit and I participate in it, I go, I pay whatever I have to pay or do it, and I go and I sit and I watch the event, And then when it's over, I'm on to the next one. Sometimes we have, some reflection time and we'll post something like, oh, I did this. You take a picture, a selfie with the presenter and like, I'm here and I'm doing this. But then here's what happens. More often than not, and if you are not in this category, then this does not apply to you. More often than not, with myself, I'll participate, I'll have a little reflection. Maybe I'll do something on the podcast about it, maybe not. And then that's it. I'm on to the next one. And so I found myself reflecting when I was listening. I'm in this consumption. I have to do the next thing with my teaching. Here's why I think that's important to recognize and perhaps avoid. The motorcycle's outside, so we'll just wait for that to go by. Hang on. And they're gone. So why I think that's really important for us to recognize if we get into this cycle of I need to do more, I need to collect more, I need to get another certificate, I need to do the next thing, is that what are you getting out of that? Besides the accumulation of certificates, are you really putting any of that into practice? Because I know I certainly have gone to conferences and events and training sessions and paid for things that I actually was completely immersed at the moment, but then afterwards, I never put that stuff into practice. Not once. There's some things that I did put into practice, and then there's some things that I was just doing it because I was going through the motions. And as teachers, I think, because this is how it made me feel, I realized that as I'm going through these things and I'm just, kind of going through the motions, collecting my little certificate or my diploma or my paper that says I participated, as I'm doing all of these things, I just kind of feel bad. I kind of feel bad about myself because I feel like I'm not doing enough because everybody else is doing so much more than me. And I'm not doing what I probably should be doing with that information. So it kind of got me thinking of like teachers' mental health. So one, we're participating in this culture of like constant consumption and underutilization of ideas and theories and practices and whatever else you want to put out there. So we're underutilizing those, over-consuming on whatever we're choosing to get. And then also we feel bad about it. So then we get sad because we see other people consuming more than we're consuming, or quote unquote doing better than what we're doing. And then we have mental health issues because we think, gosh, I should be doing more. Gosh, I should be, because then we're comparing to other people. Because whether you like it or not, when we're consuming things, why are we consuming things? Because we see that not necessarily us, that other people have done this and it's probably the best next step for me, because that's what my social group, which is a bunch of English language teachers, that's what is kind of dictated. So this whole thing kind of came about because I clicked on something that I giggled to myself like, oh God, this is going to be a terrible podcast. And this is going to be like something so, cringy, listening to these people talk about, something that's relatively controversial and can be relatively offensive in some cases. And it turned out that it made me think about myself and my practices and how I'm probably not doing things that I would in the most beneficial way for me. And I oftentimes, and now I'm starting to see this as I'm going through interview processes for formal courses and things along those lines. As I'm doing this, what I realized was when I interview candidates for some of the courses, the first thing that they say when the question is asked, because we always ask the question, in any course or in any, situation, I ask my business English students, why do you want to take this course? Why do you want to start studying? What's the reason? What's the motivation behind it? And more often than not, with teachers, specifically with teacher training courses, more often than not, the answer is because I want to do the next thing. And that's really concerning for me. as a professional, because I think that I did this on multiple occasions. I'm not exempting myself from this, and I'm not taking the higher road here or saying that I don't do this. No, I do this. And this is why it was so concerning for me, was that I sat in one of my interviews. I specifically remember this. And the person asked me, "Why do you want to take this course, Kelly?" And I said, "Well, because I want to do that." I wasn't even focused on the benefits that this course would take me. I was already focused on the next thing that I wanted to do after that course. And that's that's what hit me when I was listening to this podcast episode, that we're not focused on getting all of the benefits out of the experience that we're about to embark on. All we're doing is focusing on, this is going to get me there, and how far up the ladder can I look? So I need to do this before I can get 3 rungs up the ladder. The motorcycle is back. Anyways, so that was my thought, stemming from this podcast, which I thought was, the podcast in itself was, related to a social issue about body positivity and how, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, and health concerns for people. It was like a whole scenario. But I really wasn't concerned about the health part of it. I was making it an analogy for what I do as a teacher, and what I think many professionals do as teachers, is that we look at something not for the value that it is and for the benefit and how we can use that to our benefit. We only look at these courses and things that we're doing as stepping stones to the next thing, because we're so worried about just consuming content and consuming courses and acquiring multiple degrees and things like that, without actually putting any of it into practice. Because if we're a highly qualified professional that has a ton of information, quote unquote, a ton of information, because we've done 75 courses and I've done all of this, but then we actually don't put any of that into practice, how qualified are you really? It was a thought that I had. I thought that I'm reflecting on myself, because how qualified am I really to be able to do some of these things? And things to think about. I guess I'll leave you with that. Sorry for the motorcycle, but hopefully everything else was clear. And let me know in the comments if you feel the same way, if you think that we're going in generally the right direction, or if you think that people are just accumulating these accolades and not really putting them into practice. So what's the benefit in that? All right, I will see everyone later with another episode.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Real Talk and ELT. Want to join the conversation? Head on over to Instagram at Kelly Pennington ELT and send me a message. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube or Spotify channel to stay up to date. And of course, take care of yourself, your health, your vibe, and your tribe. Until next time.